Welcome to a new episode in the Multiverse video series. I'm Javier Luraski, and today we're going to learn how to create custom pins and custom boards. If you don't remember what the pins package does, you can take a look at the previous video, or we can give you a quick, one minute overview of what the pins package is good at. If you go to the documentation of this particular package, under rstudio.github.io/pins, you can navigate to the Getting Started guide. And here you will find a diagram that I think explains well what the pins package is about. So you're probably familiar with the central part of this diagram, which describes a data science project. So usually a data science project starts with importing your data set, and then you understand your data set by wrangling it, visualizing it, and modeling, and eventually you communicate the results. So those are the main components, and they're described in the R for Data Science project. However, there's a couple other operations that are also common in data science projects. The first one is discovering where your data sets are and retrieving them. And pins can help you basically fetch data sets and also discover them from multiple sources. For instance, you can find data sets in CRAN, in Kaggle, or in RStudio Connect, and in specific boards like hosted on websites. Not only that, but the pins package allows you to pin resources. So you can use the pin function to retrieve a URL that contains a dataset or a resource, and basically cache it locally such that you don't need to be retrieving it multiple times. And you can work offline with it, and also in such a way that you can share it between multiple projects. So that's the caching part from that the pins package provides. And the other piece is sharing. So usually, not necessarily usually, but there's times when after doing a data science workflow, what you might want to do is share your cleaned data set or in general findings for others to reuse. And a lot of times you would communicate using R Markdown or Shiny Apps, but there's times where you might want to also let others reuse your actual source data set or present your results as a data set that you can share with others. And that's where the pin function can also help you not only retrieve stuff locally, but also pin stuff to multiple boards. So you can basically, work locally with data sets and then eventually share your result sets with others across multiple services like GitHub, Kaggle, RStudio Connect, or why not. And if you want to see a specific example of how this works, look at the previous video where we do a little analysis to understand Game of Thrones dataset on just episode dialogues, and we kind of make use of the pins package while doing this analysis. Anyways, so that's a brief overview of the pins package. What we're going to focus today is in two kind of advanced functionality from the pins package. So as you can see from the documentation, there's two main ways of extending pins. One is you can create extensions for an actual pin, and the other one is you create boards which wrap different services. So for instance, you could have a board for Dropbox or FTP servers or whatever, but you can also create extensions for particular pins. And we're going to try to cover both in this video. So let's get started with extending pins. And just to refresh your memory, let's just take a look at what the pins package does. So the main function of the pins package is called pin. And so you want to install the package and then load it. Oh, you want to load it with library pins, obviously. Just clear this up. And once the library is loaded, basically you can pin absolutely anything. So you can say something like pin, like list 1, 2, 3, and you can give this a name and call this a list. So basically what happened here is we created a pin, and it's not a very interesting pin. It's just a list. It doesn't have any columns. And if we look at this pin, it's just a list of 3 numbers. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. However, if we were to push this to say, let's register a GitHub board, register GitHub, and we'll call this the repo. We're gonna reuse a repo that I have. And you can specify branches. So we're gonna say test extensions, just for the sake of this. Yeah, so let's register the GitHub board at this particular test extensions. Let's see, if I did this correctly. Yeah, I think so. Anyways, all right, so one of the things that we can do is take a look at this particular, yeah, so we're in this particular data set, particular branch, and we have basically the 3 data sets that we created, like on the last video. So if we want to move them, we can, but we're gonna leave them be just for the sake of it. All right, so let's just pin again this, and we're gonna pin it and say board equals GitHub. So now what's going on is, rather than creating this local cache of our pins, the pins are getting created in GitHub, or at least that's what should have happened. Timeout. All right, let's just give it another shot. Yeah, weird. So I might have had like bad connection or whatever. So basically what happened is the pin got created, and if we were to refresh this, now we should be able to see here that we have another pin, which is the list. But the thing here is that even though you can pin absolutely anything, any R object, the problem here is that this is getting pinned as an it's just getting pinned as a RDS binary object, which is great for R. This is absolutely the correct file format to pin R sources, but the problem is it's not very easy to understand what this is, especially if you're sharing with others, and if if multiple people are using this system, you have this descriptor file that is telling you that basically something exists, but there's no way of taking a look at this particular file. Right, so that's a bit of a problem. It's not terrible. It's great when working with R, but we can make things better. And the way that we can make this better is by implementing a custom function. So for instance, in this case, we know that the class of a list is a list, right? Oh, sorry, that's the function. But if we were to say 1, 2, 3, the class would be a list. So as you can, the first way of extending pins is by creating a custom pin. So we can do better. So the way that we're gonna solve this is by it's gonna be by overriding these functions. And I would recommend that this gets created into its own package. Just for the sake of this video, we're just gonna create it based on like an R script. But there's obviously more work to do for this particular case. All right, so what you can do is assign the class that you're creating a pin for. So we're gonna say that is a list, and yeah, also this one and also this one. So there's 3 functions that we want to implement, and then what we want to do is basically we want to save this object in a particular file format. It's usually recommended to keep it to still save the format as RDS, but in this case, it's so safe that we don't need to really save an RDS. Well, actually, we do need to save an RDS file because, like even though like a list of, like three numerics, we could potentially save this as JSON, YAML, like XML or whatever. But the problem is like you could also have complex objects like, it's an arbitrary list, so one of the objects could be something very specific to R. Anyways. Yeah, so we're still gonna save it as an RDS. So we're gonna keep this. Maybe we should name it something else. We're gonna call it list RDS to at least know that this is an a list. But then what we want to do, what we could do is also save it, for instance, as JSON. So we can use JSON Lite, write JSON, yeah, write JSON, and then the content, and then the path is gonna be list.json. Yeah, that's it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We're not gonna add metadata whatsoever. That's it. And we're gonna name the type. The default parameter here is just the type. We're gonna mention that the type of this particular pin is just a list. So this should be enough, hopefully. If not, we will debug this. Let's remove this. And actually, for this particular case, this list, if you were interested in implementing this, I don't think a whole new package is needed. We should probably send a pull request to the pins repo and get it to work there. It's just so simple that it doesn't really make sense to have a whole new package for this. But that's also something to consider. So let's just create these three functions. And let's pin again the exact same list that we pinned before. So let's try it and see how that works this time. All right, so metadata was not found. Okay, that makes sense because we didn't define it. So let's just give this a shot again, and let's try to pin. So what we're doing again is just saving to GitHub. That's pretty much it, and you can see that retrieves the list. But what we should see in GitHub is if we refresh this particular data set, what we can see now is that, did we save the correct? Oh, yeah. So we have a bug here. Basically what happened is that once you finish creating your extension, what you should pass to board pin store is a folder that contains all the files that you want saved. And we happen to be saving this file, like on the current directory, which is not what we want. So let's just save it on the correct path, right? And we'll try again. Oh, we don't want to save this file. Let's try again. Right, so we updated our pin extension, and we're gonna save the pin in our GitHub board again. Right, so now it's saved. Let's refresh this. And now what we expect to see, it's a list. We have the RDS file, and we also have the list.json file. And if we were to look at this file, we see that we have a JSON file, which is great because this means that if someone else were to use this particular resource, even outside R, they would be able to read it without looking at the specifics of what's going on. Now, more interesting use case for this, I probably want, I don't think we'll have time for doing this, or maybe we would. We can try to give it a shot, but basically, something more interesting to extend would be to extend ggplot. And, I wonder if we can just get a sample, like a sample script from ggplot. Maybe with diamonds or whatever. And let's see, user guides. Yeah, sure. Extending, no. Maybe just this one. I'm sure there's an example here. Yeah, so so here we have a ggplot object. Let's just create this and we'll call it a plot. And library ggplot2. Okay, so we have a plot which renders properly. That's great. But if we look at the class of the plot, it's it's a ggplot class. And if we were to pin this, we would have the same problem. So we could also try, and if we run out of time, maybe someone can complete this on their own. But let's try to create a class that is useful for ggplot. Right, so yeah, let's call this one plot.rds. So we're basically doing the same, but now instead of saving a JSON file, what would be really cool would be to save would be to save an actual PNG file, for instance. I think we can do ggsave, and we can give x as our plot, and then let's see, how does ggsave work? There must be a way of saving ggplot, right? Oh well, let's see. I might totally fail in this video doing this, but you get the idea. Let's see. Yeah, ggplot empty cars. Oh, yeah, of course. Okay, so what we want to, this should work maybe, hopefully, I don't know. So yeah, we'll just use the object, and then we'll plot it and say file.path, and then we'll use the path comma, and then we'll call it like plot dot. What's the default? Oh, it's a PNG. The default is a PNG, right? All right. So I think in theory this should work, and we'll call this having type plot. Yeah, let's try this. I mean, if it doesn't work, it's honestly it's unrelated with pins. Like some of you know ggplot much better than I do. Let's just give it a shot. So suppose that I want to pin. What do we call this? We call this plot, right? Yeah. So suppose that we want to create a pin for plot. You can always plot. You can always pin a ggplot to a board for sure, but it's gonna pin as a base RDS file, right? So what we can do here is say pin plot, and let's just call it styles plot maybe, or gg styles, whatever, I don't know, gg styles plot, and we'll put it on the board GitHub. Is that it? Let's see if this works. All right, so we're creating the pin, and that's pretty much it. Apparently I broke something. Let's see if anything changed here. Let's see. Okay, so we do have a ggplot file here. I wonder what the problem was. So there's obviously something still that we need to troubleshoot. Zip file, read RDS. Oh, data.rds. Oh, yes. All right, this is actually kind of important to notice because it's something that you're going to hit as well. So notice here that I'm using the ggplot class. However, that's not the class that we save the pin with, right? The pin, we're saving the pin with class plot. Now, honestly, I don't think, I mean, I don't know if this is a great class because we're still saving a binary object. It's not like a generic description of what is being loaded. So I think it would be more appropriate to save this as a ggplot, as the class. However, if you were defining something more generic and wanted to load back just the PNG file, which we could do potentially, we can say ggplot. Well, I don't know if there's a way on ggplot of just. I'm sure there is a way. I just don't know how to do it. To plot like a PNG, whatever. So that would work fine, but then we would have to change the class of this ggplot. We would have to change it to plot because that's the class that we're reading back from the pin and the particular board. So I think in this case we actually made the mistake with the type because we're still reading this as an RDS file. So it would make sense to have this type. So let's try this again. So we'll pin it again. It's saving, and now hopefully we shouldn't get a warning. We shouldn't get a warning when we read this back. And we still got it. Why are we getting? Why are we getting still a warning? We're reading. Oh, we're still reading read RDS data.rds. Interesting. We might have to remove it and then create it again. Maybe. Let's see. Well, I might give up on this because I don't want to spend all the time troubleshooting. I'm sure there is a way of. I'm sure there is a way of figuring out the right combination. Board equals. But the idea of this video is mostly to teach you how to create extensions, and like there's always some troubleshooting involved. So not a big deal. But let's just try it again. If it fails, I'll show you the other half, which is yeah, it's fine, whatever. So there's something to troubleshoot here. I'm not quite sure what it is. It's gonna bother me for sure. We can actually do something. We can do pin find board equals GitHub. And yeah, this type is a ggplot. Interesting. So one of the things, yeah, we could probably debug this, and you know, like if someone is really interested to make this work, actually I might end up sending a pull request and implementing this on pins. But yeah, it's probably, I don't want to spend too much time trying to get this working. I think we did this properly. But yeah, there's probably something silly that we're missing. And you know, I'm not going to troubleshoot in this video, even though I keep doing it. But what I do want to show you is that when we're pinning this particular file, the really cool thing is that we're actually now creating a PNG file when we pin this particular object to GitHub. So as you can see here, now we have a beautiful PNG file, and you know, we could potentially you know, like copy link address, I guess, and this should be just a pure PNG file. And then what is really cool is that you could potentially just tweet about this, which I'll try to tweet about this in particular, or why not, and you know, kind of like show it as an example. It's just a really nice way of having both the actual source of your ggplot object to be able to reuse it from R, but also be able to save it on the right format that allows others to interoperate with this. All right, so this concludes the first half of the video. You kind of learned how to extend pins using the extensibility API from the pins package. Now we're going to take a look at how to extend pins by using custom boards. So again, a board is just a storage endpoint. It's a storage service that allows you to save your boards. It allows you to store your pins, and it defines, you know, in order to properly define a board, you need to define 4 operations. You need to teach the board how to create a file on the remote storage location, and how to retrieve them. And 2 additional operations that can be quite useful is finding a pin and also obviously removing one. Now, you could potentially have read-only boards if you implement only the find and retrieve APIs. So this is actually the case with the when you do pin find and say something like, I don't know why I'm thinking of bacteria, but saying pin find bacteria board equals packages. What this particular board does is it actually searches cran to give you datasets that are related with bacteria, which you can see here. There's apparently some datasets related to that, but actually this seems incorrect. I'll take a look at that. Anyways, but what is interesting to mention is that this particular board doesn't support creating or removing datasets, because cran on its own is a read-only storage location for these datasets. Anyway, so you can also create read-only datasets. You can, for instance, create pins for Wikipedia or for searching stuff on open.gov or anything. Basically, you know, like as long as you implement these 2 methods, then you can basically provide functionality to search pins from R using the pins package. And then the other 2, create and remove, are required if you want to create boards that are read and write capable. So how does that look like? There's like a very simple example here to look at. And actually, before we get there, what I should show you is kind of like how exactly... Is this the correct path? Yeah. So if you were to go to a library cache pins, and it actually depends on your operating system. But if you look at, my path, I believe, yeah, board cache path. It would basically this basically shows you the path, the local path where your local cache of pins lives. So I should kind of like give you a sense of how this works. So remember we started this video by pinning a simple list. So what the pins package does, it basically creates this local cache in the designated storage location for your operating system using the rappdears package. It just basically saves those two files, which we're gonna do something similar for this particular board extension. So again, this is a very simple board. Usually what you would want to do is use the HTTR package to push the files to a remote location or something a little bit more complicated. Basically, all this board does is kind of like all this board does is store the locations on a different location, so which happens to be local. So in this case, what we're doing is we're defining what to do when we initialize the board. Notice that you get a board and then you pass back a board, so that allows you to add additional properties or authentication or whatever. And then you need to define the create operation, which in this case, the only thing that we're doing is we are creating a directory and then we're copying the files. Once we do that, then when we want to retrieve those particular files, all we have to tell pins is where those files are located. In a real world case, a scenario, you would want to download the files from your local, from your remote storage to your local machine. And for this, I recommend you use a function. I don't know if it's exported in pins. Yeah, it's not exported, it's private. So I should make it public for you to be able to reuse. But you can use this handy function called pin download that allows you to pass a URL. And on top of that, you can set the name where you're storing, the name of the pin, and then the component, which would be the local folder. And you can also pass a secret headers parameter, which I should also make public, with a specific HTTR headers. So this can be pretty handy just to download stuff and handle all the caching for you, because otherwise you would kind of have to re-implement the caching that pins implements. So if you're doing this, let me know and I can help. But for this particular just folder-based board, we don't need to do much, but just point boards to the local location, which happens to already exist. And then finding, you're just gonna retrieve kind of like the files that are inside that directory, and to remove something, we're just gonna delete it. Again, this is extremely simple, but then the cool thing is that you could also, you can, now we can combine both, right? Like we can use our simple list. Where is our list? We can create a new list, why not? We can pin a list, 1 to 10, and then we can say board equals folder. That's pretty much it. And when you look, our current directory, I believe I'm just working with the pins package, so I should go to my local folder, and you can see here, we should be able to see here, yeah, that there is a pins folder that contains basically the file that we created, right? And as you can see here, we have our JSON file, because we also overrode how to create a particular how to create a particular list into a nicely formatted JSON file. And we're also using a custom board, which is a local folder relative to the project that we implemented through the boards extensions API. So again, there's a bunch of cool, interesting ideas that you can do by mixing both custom pins and custom boards. There's a few ideas floating around. If you go to the repo, RStudio Pins, you can go to the projects page and you can see that there's a few interesting boards that people have been suggesting that might be worth implementing, or if someone is interested in implemented, let me know, at least to not duplicate efforts. One of the likely ones that I'm going to work on next, I want to add support for Hadoop, so such that you can push big datasets to Hadoop, which it's related with Spark and why not. You might have seen some of those videos that we have, but the idea would be to push datasets to Hadoop using the pins package very easily, which then you can use tools like Spark to process at scale if needed. Anyway, so that's one idea, but there's a bunch of other ideas. FTP, a network, MLflow, data packager is a very popular kind of like storage for datasets based on packages. As Synapse, OpenML, would be cool to search Wikipedia, all the Wikipedia datasets as boards. I don't know exactly how that would look like. I thought there was like a subset of Wikipedia based only on datasets, but I might be wrong. I mean, I'm pretty sure. Is it DBpedia? Yeah, I think it's DBpedia. So I think DBpedia has basically the same content of Wikipedia. No, that's not the page that I was looking for. Anyways, I don't want to figure it out right now, but I'm sure there's. I remember there's a way of kind of like being able to query all the Wikipedia datasets, kind of like the things like the cards that you have on the right of Wikipedia and whatever, datasets for machine learning, whatever. Oh wow, this is a bunch of stuff. Let's go to the main page. But yeah, like for instance, some of these datasets that like appear in most of the pages or cards. There are ways. There's an API on not, I don't remember if it's an API or a different website, but there's basically a way of getting data out of Wikipedia. So we could potentially build a board that is read-only that allows us to search Wikipedia and retrieve those datasets in a nicely formatted data frame format. Anyways, so there's a lot of them. If you have suggestions, just go ahead and open a GitHub issue. We can't obviously implement absolutely all the boards that we can think of, but I can take a look at the most important ones. For instance, one of the popular ones that got recently added was adding support for S3, which I'll probably cover in another video. Oh, I should have closed it. Yeah, actually, this is already implemented. But yeah, so open a suggestion, and then if the community can actually vote and give us feedback on which would be the boards that you want implemented, that would be great, because then we can focus our energy on the ones that make the most sense. And yeah, that's about it. We can close this one. All right, well, thank you so much for taking a look at this video. I hope that this was useful, and my guess is that with this overview, you should feel compelled and have the right tools to either create pin extensions or board extensions. If you need any help, you can open a GitHub issue or find us on Gitter, and I'll be more than happy to give you a few pointers to get your boards and pins going. All right, well, thank you.